Welcome in to Outkick the show. My name is Clay Travis. I am your fearless leader. Don't want to alarm anyone, but my hair is spectacular. Maybe the greatest haircut ever cut in the history of mankind. I don't know if this show is doing it justice, but just to be safe, not sure I'd let your wife or girlfriend watch the show today. I don't know that you want to have to explain to her why she's with you instead of with me. I don't know if you want my haircut to have to, I don't know if you want the pressure that comes with just not knowing whether your wife or girlfriend, when she leaves the house tomorrow morning or tonight, is going to be just driving to Nashville to try to find out where I live. I don't know if you want that pressure on you. I don't know if your relationship can withstand that. I don't know. I don't know whether you can handle it or not. Lots to get to today. So much to talk about in addition to my haircut. First of all, the NHL playoffs are off and running, and I don't want to seem like a pussy here, but my life gets a lot worse when the NHL playoffs and the NBA playoffs start because these games end so late. My alarm goes off at 4:15 every morning. I don't know how many of you are up at 4:15 in the morning. It's really fucking early at 4:15 in the morning. It is pitch black outside. When my alarm goes off, I have no idea what time it might be. Okay? The Preds are playing tonight at 8:30. Somehow the Nashville Predators are in the Western Conference. The NBA playoffs are best in the Western Conference. I don't know how I'm going to survive because every night, whatever the top story is, doesn't end till after midnight for like the next 2 months. And in addition to writing a book and raising 3 children and having the best damn hair in America, I don't know how I'm going to be able to withstand all this. I'm also on a diet. My wife decided I was getting fat. I'm on this shake diet. I got up to 195 pounds. Right now I'm about 189. I got to get down to like 175. I got so much to take care of. Anyway, go to sportsbookreview.com. I am Clay Travis, and I'm telling you that if you want to gamble on the NHL or you want to gamble starting on with the NBA on Saturday, you need to make sure you get the best possible lines. You need to make sure that whatever side you're betting, you end up on the right side of the number. Best way to do that, shop around. You can shop around at all the different places at sportsbookreview.com. Go to sportsbookreview.com, and you'll be hooked up, and you will be ready to roll, and you will be in outstanding shape. That's sportsbookreview.com. Also, well, let me go ahead and start, and then I'll tell you about the Vegas trip. Let me go ahead and start here. I don't know if you guys have seen this news. Well, actually, let me tell you about the Vegas trip. I should be able to announce by Monday of next week the official details of the Vegas trip, where we're going to be staying, how many spots I'm going to have, all of those things. The best way to get in is to be an Outkick VIP. You can also get in. You can also get in if you have the opportunity. If you have the opportunity and you are smart and you hook up with everybody out there who is advertising right now, I am telling you right now that you should be able to get in, and you will be glad that you get in if you go to the Home Loan Expert and qualify, get pre-qualified for a brand new mortgage, or you get the opportunity to absolutely get hooked up with pre-qualification. It's spring. It's the season. It is outstanding. Go to thehomeloanexpert.com. Let my guy Ryan Kelly take care of you. If you do that in the month of April and you close a mortgage, I will give you a free weekend. I will give you a free weekend in Las Vegas at the hotel, and you'll be able to come to Outkick the weekend. That is come again. Go to thehomeloanexpert.com. Get hooked up. You will be ready to roll, and you will be glad that you did. I hope all of you are going to be able to make it, but I know you aren't, because we're only going to be able to have several hundred. I'm not even sure what the total number is going to be. I got to get all the numbers. VIPs are going to get in, and if you close a mortgage in the month of April, you'll be able to go for free to the event. You still have to get out to Vegas, but you get a free hotel. Okay. Let's go with the news stories of the day. Several different things I want to get. One, the Colin Kaepernick story will not end. It's the story that will not die. It's the story that continues to cost the NFL teams in a major fashion. And it is this. Colin Kaepernick has reportedly been contacted by the Seahawks, who were interested in signing him. And then what happens? He will not acknowledge that he will stand for the national anthem. Now, this is a story that should have ended a long time ago. I hope in May the NFL owners make the smart decision and mandate that players stand for the national anthem. It's a rule that exists in virtually every other sport. They do it in the NBA, and the NBA has had no complaints the entire season. Every player has stood for the national anthem in the NBA for the entire season, and we haven't had any controversy associated with it. We haven't had to talk about politics. We haven't had to talk about Colin Kaepernick's sorry broke ass. We haven't had to do it at all in the NBA. The NBA players have been very political. The NBA coaches have been very political. I don't agree with giving all that attention to their political opinions. I think that sports figures should be treated like actors and actresses. Don't pay attention to their politics until they demonstrate that they are sophisticated enough actors that they could go on a major sports network, a major news network and debate their case in a strong fashion. That's my position in general. But if you are an employee, all right, if you are an employee, and I can't believe I have to say this, you don't have the right in uniform at work to advocate your political beliefs. Nobody does. If you go to McDonald's and you go up to the counter and you order a Big Mac and the person there says, yeah, you can order a Big Mac, but I believe that beef is murder, you would get fired at McDonald's. You have the right to be a vegetarian. You have the right to be a vegan. But if you work at McDonald's, you don't have the right to tell people who are ordering a hamburger, oh, you know what? You're doing something wrong here. You're in a uniform. You represent McDonald's. If you're at Walmart, you don't have the right. I'm telling you this right now. You don't have the right at the checkout counter to say to somebody as they come through with their order, oh, by the way, abortion is murder. You would get fired. You cannot do that. If you are a member of the military, you cannot undertake a political job. You could not, for instance, if you are a cop, walk up to a car that you had pulled over and wear a Make America Great Again hat. That's the truth. You would never be able to do that, okay? So the NFL needs to get out of this stupid-ass business where they allow Espn to kill their business and make a simple rule. You stand for the national anthem. If you don't want to stand for the national anthem, you can go elsewhere. This idea that players have unlimited rights on the field is insane. You can get penalized for celebration on touchdown violations. That violates your First Amendment rights. That rule violates your First Amendment rights. You cannot do certain things during a touchdown celebration without being fined. If you decide that you're going to pull your dick out and twirl it around like a helicopter, you have a First Amendment right to be able to act in that fashion. You can pull your dick out and twirl it around like a helicopter, all right? You can do that. You can argue that's speech, and you're arguing that you believe in helicopter dicks. Guess what? You're going to get fined, and you're probably going to get fired, and you're also probably going to be violating obscenity codes in your state. There are all sorts of restrictions on the First Amendment. All right? That happens all the time. You can get fined, as Colin Kaepernick did, for using the wrong words on the field. Colin Kaepernick called another player on the field a few years ago a racial slur, and he got fined for it. That is a restriction on your First Amendment rights. You don't have complete First Amendment rights when you work inside of a business. And I am so sick of how many people are idiots about not understanding this. You don't have a First Amendment right to unlimited speech when you are in a uniform at a job. Now, if the San Francisco 49ers or any other NFL team said, hey, we don't believe that our players should be able to talk about politics outside of our facility in their private time, I would be on their side. I would say, guess what? You have the right to your own political beliefs. That's actually the argument that I have made about Curt Schilling getting fired by ESPN. That my problem with Jemele Hill saying that Donald Trump was a white supremacist was not the fact that she said it. It was the fact that she could say that with no penalty given to her at all, but that Curt Schilling could not say that he disagreed with the North Carolina transgender bathroom bill without being fired by ESPN. I don't particularly care what your opinion is on gay marriage, for instance. I think you should all have the right to have your opinion. And I don't think you're an awful human being if you don't think gay people should get married. I happen to disagree with you, but I don't particularly care. So as a result, the standard of speech is different, and I feel like the NFL just needs to come out and own this story. The NFL needs to come out and own this story and say players are going to stand for the national anthem. They believe that is good for their business. They don't believe that is a political statement. I would agree with them. I agree with them there. I think it's a little bit strange the national anthem gets played before every sporting event because, in effect, sporting events are entertainment. But that is what your employer deems to be good for his business. All of them should stand, just like the NBA players stand. Hasn't been a controversy in the NBA that the rule exists. Nobody has decided to take a knee. Nobody has decided to distract from the season. Nobody has decided to turn this into an ongoing charade where everybody at ESPN can walk around and parade around and argue that they are the greatest people on earth because they have a political opinion that most people at ESPN agree with. I just don't understand it. I think it's insane. I think it's hurt ratings. I think it's been bad for the brand. I think it's been bad for the business. I think it's been bad for ESPN's business. And I am writing this in my book, which will be out in September. It's called Republicans Buy Sneakers Too. It's going to be fantastic. And a lot of you are going to love it. So that's the truth. Baseball players stand. Hockey players stand. The game I went to Saturday, this was great. I talked about this. The game I went to Saturday, the last game of the regular season in the NHL, they played the Canadian national anthem, even though it was the Columbus Blue Jackets playing the Nashville Predators, because they wanted to show respect for the 15 people who died were junior hockey players in Canada. And they asked people to stand up and sing along with the national anthem. It was an incredibly awe-inspiring moment. I don't know the words of the Canadian national anthem. I was surprised by how many people did. But when you stand for the national anthem, you are showing respect for the country that you're fortunate enough to live in. And Colin Kaepernick specifically said he wasn't going to show respect for the flag because he decided that police officers were killing black people. He's an idiot. There is no basis to his political argument. If he ever opened his mouth and came on my radio show, as I have offered to allow him to do, I would decapitate him verbally, and he has the opportunity to come on at any point in time. But in the meantime, this is an important lesson for all of you. If you are bad for your boss's business, then he doesn't have to allow you to remain employed there. Everybody who runs a business gets to choose whether or not employees make sense for their business. And you are not able to bring your political beliefs to your business in uniform while you are on the clock and be able to make your protest felt. You just can't do it. You can do whatever you want outside of work hours. The easy analogy I have used for a long time is this. When you pull up in a building at work, you can have whatever bumper sticker you want on the back of your car. You can't take that bumper sticker and put it on the front of the business. You can't take the yard sign that is in front of your house supporting whoever you might want to be elected president and put it in the front yard of your business. That is not good for business. This is beyond a shadow of a doubt bad for the NFL's business. I'm just glad that it's finally out there. I would bet that this is probably leaked. I think this is probably leaked by the NFL in advance of their league meetings. And they're going to say, look, every job has a certain number of requirements. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. If I sat down on the radio, I'm in the process of negotiating a radio extension. If I said to my bosses, hey, from now on the radio, I want to be able to say the word fuck. They would say, well, no, you can't do that. I would say, why? Well, because when you're on the air working for us, there are FCC restrictions, and we will get fined millions of dollars if you say fuck on the radio during your show. Now, I can say fuck during my Facebook and my Periscope because there are no FCC restrictions on this. If I then continued every single show to say the word fuck, I would get fired. That violates my First Amendment rights under the same stupid argument that Colin Kaepernick's people are making. I am paid literally for my opinions, but I am paid for my opinions within the construct of what my employer deems to be acceptable speech. And FCC restrictions require that I not say fuck. If I found out on my show that if we opened, and people say, why do you have to play the national anthem? Well, because the NFL owners and the league have decided it's good for business. If I found out that my revenue on advertising would increase if we started the radio show by playing the national anthem, do you know what I would do? I would play the national anthem. I would. If you told me, Clay Travis, I will pay you $300,000 more if every hour on your radio show you begin with the national anthem, guess what? My bosses would say, you know what? We're going to play the national anthem before your show. And I would say, you know what? That makes sense. It's good for business. I don't understand why other people out there can't comprehend this. I think this is an example of all too frequently people think as employees as opposed to owners. Listen to a business owner. If you make money for me, I will defend you. If you cost me money, I will not employ you. That's not complicated. That's a rule across the board. If you make your employer money, he will employ you. If you lose your employer money, he will not employ you anymore. That's Kaepernick. That's the truth. All right, ESPN Plus launched. This is fascinating. If you are interested, like I am, in sports media and business, ESPN Plus is the new direct offering to consumers out there. I want to poll you guys on Facebook and on Twitter. How many of you will be interested in signing up for ESPN Plus? It's $4.99 a month. Will any of you, yes or no, sign up for ESPN Plus? I'm curious. I just want to see the poll. I want to see the results on Facebook too. I'm curious to see what the actual outcome is. Now, a couple of facts that you need to know. It's $4.99 a month, and you don't get any of the existing programming on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, the SEC Network, ESPN News, any of those shows. If it airs on cable or satellite, it is not included in the new ESPN Plus offering. So to me, what this represents is ESPN trying to pivot into the business that Netflix is in. The challenge that they're going to have is it's all about the content. It's about the content, stupid. It's only as important as the content. And the content that ESPN is going to offer is going to be pretty bad. Here's what on the day they launched. I couldn't believe when I saw this. I knew it was going to be bad, but this is like as good as the games are going to get. Yeah, a lot of you don't understand that. ESPN, let me explain that. ESPN Plus, you only get things that are not on television. You only get things that are not already on television. You have to have a cable and satellite subscription. Let's say you want to watch Monday Night Football, or you want to watch the SEC Network games, or you want to watch the NBA. You only get it if you have a cable and satellite subscription. Otherwise, the $4.99 is for additional content that was not good enough to actually air on ESPN. So I feel like a lot of people don't understand this, and a lot of people are going to sign up, and then they're going to be like, "Wait a minute, why would I sign up for this?" And I'm going to say, like, "Yeah, no doubt." So here is what was offered, for instance, on today's $4.99 a month offering. Here was what was the big offer. And here it is. I need to pull it up because I was curious about this. Rich Greenfield tweeted this out. Here was the content available only on ESPN Plus. All right, only on ESPN Plus. English League, Bradford City versus Shrewsbury. The PGA featured holes. NCAA tennis, Florida Gulf Coast versus North Florida. Super Rugby, Hurricanes versus Chiefs. NCAA baseball, Western Carolina versus VMI. NCAA women's lacrosse, Central Michigan versus Furman. That is it. That's the entire group of offerings people are going to have to pay $5 a month for. Now, I think what this represents, and this is not good, obviously. That's a mess of a offering here. This is all the content that was not good enough to be on regular ESPN that they are now trying to charge $4.99 a month for. And as a result, this is a challenge that they're trying to deal with, which is a mess. This is a mess. You have a really complex system here where Netflix is dominating, okay? ESPN is aware that they need a streaming offering, but they're not allowed to put anything that currently airs on cable or satellite onto actual ESPN Plus. So for everybody out there that is curious about this, people say, why doesn't ESPN just offer a direct-to-consumer product? They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do that under their cable and satellite deals. So unlike, say, HBO, which is a premium channel and can offer a direct subscription, even if you don't have a cable or satellite subscription, you can sign up for HBO. You don't have that opportunity with ESPN. So it's all the crappy programming that's not good enough to be on cable that they're trying to offer on ESPN+. And here's the big challenge. I think in general, the lesson that Netflix has brought to bear. Now, how many of you are Netflix subscribers? If you are a Netflix subscriber, tell me yes. If you are a Netflix subscriber, let me know. I am curious to see how many of you are Netflix subscribers. If you are a Netflix subscriber, this is a business. Almost all of you are going to be Netflix subscribers, I bet. Netflix has decided that all that matters is the original content that they create. So whether it's House of Cards, Stranger Things, whether it is Narcos, Orange is the New Black, there are tons of original programming now that Netflix creates. That new Will Smith movie where he plays like the zombie cop buddy film. Adam Sandler is going direct to Netflix now. That's all original content that is owned forever by Netflix. They're spending billions of dollars on that. ESPN's business model is something different, and it's a big issue for them. They're basically Blockbuster Video. If you remember Blockbuster Video's business plan, what was it? Some of you are so young you don't even remember walking into a Blockbuster Video. That gold and blue, they were everywhere. You went and rented movies or DVDs. And you went out, and the way that Blockbuster Video made money was they rented these movies, and then when you lost it, they would charge you like $300 whenever you brought it back because you would inevitably have late fees and all this stuff. It was a great business model for a while because they rented all the movies. They didn't create anything original. Blockbuster never created anything original, but they had the physical locations and the structure, and they had the means by which they could distribute those rental movies better than anybody else. And then what happened? Streaming came along, and streaming kicked them right in the teeth, okay? And initially they were competing with Netflix when Netflix was a DVD rental company. And then Netflix started to stream directly. And then initially, if you remember, Netflix's business model was predicated on sharing other people's content. So like I watched all of Breaking Bad on Netflix. That was the first show that I spent a lot of time on Netflix with. But Netflix was not an owner of Breaking Bad. They were renting it. And then everybody started to increase what they were charging for the rights, and Netflix said, screw it, our future is in original programming, and they made House of Cards, and since then, Netflix has just exploded in popularity. Over 100 million subscribers, right as ESPN is losing its subscribers. So, Netflix's business is predicated on original content. ESPN's business is predicated on rented content. They're going to brag a lot, they always do, about how many people watch the NBA. Right? Or how many people watch the college football playoff or all those things. All ESPN is doing is renting that content. They don't own it. They don't create it. They just rent it. Okay? They bring it in, they watch it, and then they make a little bit of money on the advertising, but they make most of their money on the subscription model. The problem that ESPN has is they try to make ESPN Plus a competitor with Netflix, is Netflix is all predicated on how good their content is, and ESPN has almost no good original content. I'm curious what you guys would think about this. If I were in charge of ESPN Plus, if I were just giving advice to ESPN, because I'm such a good friend of ESPN, what content could they put behind the paywall that you guys would pay for? Here's a question that I have. How many of you listen to podcasts? How many of you would pay for podcasts if you had to get them behind the paywall? In other words, if I were ESPN, I would look at ESPN Radio and I would say, you know what? Instead of allowing podcasts to be free on iTunes, I am going to make people pay for the podcast content that they want. And a lot of people say, nope, not paying for it. I'm a pussy. I'm not paying for anything. Most of life, you pay for something that you like, right? Nobody would suggest that Wendy's should sell advertisements, and when you come there, you should eat for free, right? That would be a totally illogical business model for a fast food restaurant. If I want to give you a Frosty, nobody would say, you know what? Instead of charging people for Frosties, Wendy's should put a bunch of advertisements up inside of Wendy's and then give away the food for free. There's a cost involved in creating food. And so the idea that restaurants would give food away for free is laughably absurd. The internet has created a false dichotomy, I believe, whereby content is considered to be free. And by free, I mean it's subsidized by advertising, which I can't tell you the number of websites. People criticize me for going after money. I have never gone after the cheap money on loading up Outkick with tons of advertisements. I go on so many websites these days, and when I click on them, I immediately get a virus, right? Or I immediately get like 15 different ads that pop up, and I can't even read an article, right? That's because we've created the illusion that content is free. If I were going to sell ESPN Plus, I would say, guess what? If you like our radio programming, I'm going to put it behind a paywall. I would also, instead of spending all the money that they spent on AM Woke Center, which is continuing to be a disaster, I would make the decision to spend $25 million on trying to create a sports version of House of Cards, right? Almost like Playmakers back in the day. Imagine how good of a sports drama you could make, Friday Night Lights style, if you were willing to invest $25 million into making a great sports drama. Just go out and say, you know what? I am going to find the most talented people in the world of sports. And instead of making 30 for 30s, we're going to make Friday Night Lights like shows. You know, Ballers. Why couldn't Ballers have aired on an ESPN Plus as opposed to HBO? Make a comedy about sports. Make a comedy about inside the life of the ESPN. Whatever. Like really smart, like back in the day, Sports Night was. Really smart, really good original programming. That is what Netflix is doing and is what HBO is doing. You don't need a massive audience for those shows. If 1 million people love something, then you can make a lot of money off of it. Only like 2 million people watch Mad Men and people were in love with it. A lot of you are watching Amazon shows, you're watching Netflix shows, you're watching Hulu shows. I subscribe to all that stuff. I don't have time to watch any of it. My wife watches all of it. So here's what I would do if I were trying to make ESPN Plus a legitimate competitor to Netflix. First of all, the number one rule is content matters. And the content that they have now is shit. Nobody's going to sign up for that. Nobody's going to sign up for Ivy League basketball. Nobody's going to sign up in big numbers. You make a great television show, people pay for it. You make your podcast, which you know people are subscribing for already, put it behind the paywall. You can listen to the show live on the radio, or you can watch it on television live, or you can pay for the podcast. I think that makes a lot of sense. Podcasts need to be monetized. You need to pay for the content, put it behind the paywall. Also, I would do edgier programming that isn't ready to air on ESPN yet, and I would put it behind the paywall. Those are the suggestions that I would make. So somebody says podcast subscriptions would plummet. You guys, here, let me just explain this. This is frustrating to me. As a content creator, huge numbers are great, right? But I don't care about huge numbers ultimately. I care about the number of people who are going to consume my product that will either also consume my advertiser's product or will also pay to consume my content directly, right? And so that might be a small fraction of the overall audience. I'm talking about from a business perspective. But from a business perspective, I can make more money off 5,000 people who love me than I can maybe off 500,000 people who are just okay about it. So from a podcast perspective, the total number of listeners on the podcast shouldn't matter. That's why it's live on radio. That's why it's live on TV. Those numbers can matter because they're directly predicated on advertising. The podcast should be for the most diehard subscribers who otherwise would not be consuming your content. Make them pay for it. You're giving them a convenience. You can listen to this entire 3-hour show for 2 hours without any commercials at your leisure. You should have to pay for that. People pay for convenience. If I decide that I don't want to go to the grocery store and shop, and instead I want somebody to deliver the groceries to me at my convenience, that costs more money. The podcast is more convenient to listeners. I'm not saying if you do only a podcast, right? If you just do a podcast, that's a little bit different because your business model is entirely predicated on how many people listen to the podcast. But if you are setting up the podcast dynamic and you have live streaming, like we're on 300 AM FM stations right now, right? On 50 states, live. The vast majority of people who listen to Outkick listen to it live on the radio on their way into work. We also have millions of people who download the podcast. I don't know that from a business perspective, I lose anything at all if suddenly I make the podcast subscription-based and put it behind a paywall and only 4,000 people then are willing to pay for it over the course of the year. I'm making more money off those 4,000 than I would off the millions of downloads. That's the truth. And so as a result, I think you should have to pay behind the paywall. I think it would make a lot of sense. I don't know, would paid podcasts still have advertising? Maybe a couple of minutes, but I don't know how every podcast works because I don't listen to them. I literally don't listen to any podcast. I don't have time. But I know that, for instance, with my show, it's a 3-hour show. When you download the podcast, you get it for 2 hours. So you don't have to get any of the ads that aired during the course of the show. And you can listen to it at any point during your day that you want to. That's fine. I don't know how it benefits me from a business perspective. I really don't. I think you should have to pay for the convenience of not getting advertisements inside of the podcast and also for not listening to it live. A live radio show is planned and predicated on being listened to live. I want as many people to listen to the podcast as possible, and millions do. But I think about it. I think about things from a business perspective, right? For me, the way that I think about things is, how do I make money off this? There's lots of people out there with brilliant ideas, right? That's fine. I am more, direct to the punch. Like when people say, hey, I've got this idea to do this. Okay, how are you going to make money? And, I think that Outkick VIP, I think there's a possibility down the road that I just decide to take the podcast and put it behind the paywall and say, hey, if you really love listening to the radio show, you can listen to it live on 300 AM FM stations. You can listen to it live on Sirius, or you can pay to listen to the podcast. And so if I were ESPN, I would put the podcast behind a paywall. Content matters. If people love it, then they'll pay $6 a month or $5 a month for it. If they don't love it, then so what? You got a live radio. We make almost all of the money. I know this. Almost all the money for Fox Sports Radio comes from live programming, listening, and the advertising sold there. Podcast dollars are way behind. Now, I think the business model would be different if you're like Bill Simmons and you don't do a daily radio show and you go direct to podcast. That's a different model. I don't know how well it would work, but I think that is I think that's kind of interesting. I am of the belief that if you create content, you should be paid for it. And I think the internet has falsely created this situation where people believe that everything is free. And people can say that. Like somebody said, oh, Jim Rome did that. I never subscribed. Too much similar content to pay for it. That's fine. But I'm not making $1 off of you now. Why do I care if you listen to my podcast? Just from a pure business perspective. Obviously, I want millions of people to listen to my podcast. But from a pure business perspective, instead of 1 million people listening to my podcast in a month, wouldn't I make more money off 5,000? I think it's an interesting question. Like, why do I care? If you like it enough to pay for it, then pay for it. Nobody else who sells products is like, oh, charging people for products, that's unacceptable. We've created this artificial dichotomy. The advertisers don't care. The advertisers' ads do not run on the podcast. That's different. As an advertising podcast model, and there's not. Advertisements run on live radio. Why do you want millions to listen if it didn't make you more money long term? Well, right now, the idea is that you want millions to listen. I'm saying I think the future might be find 5,000 people who absolutely love what you do and make $1 million off them instead of making no money off 1 million people who love you. I just think it's a fascinating question. And I'm giving advice to ESPN about what I would do if you're trying to create original content. You get people to subscribe by giving them big, great deals. Netflix is spending billions of dollars on programming. Nobody's like, you know what? Netflix should be free. No, you understand that if you want to watch Stranger Things and if you want to watch all the other programming on Netflix, you pay for it. Nobody's like, hey, Black Panther's coming out. It should be free to go watch it. No, you pay to go see Black Panther. Like, they make the movie so they can make money off of you. The reason why people create content, by and large, is to make money. So how are you going to make the money? I think it's a great question. Yeah, you don't walk into a bar and be like, hey, the bar should make advertising money and I should be able to drink for free here. No, that's not a good business model. They would lose a lot of money if they had to give all the alcohol away for free. They create the bar. You come there and pay for the content when you're in there. The content in the bar is the drinks or the food. It's interesting. Walls don't work. You're wrong. You're wrong, bud. Outkick VIP is going to be a big-time success, multi-million-dollar part of our business. And I think everybody's going to start to move towards paywalls. I really do. All right. Did you see this story? Couple of different things that I was going to hit. Taylor Swift. I love this. Taylor Swift. Where is this story? I've got this story somewhere. Basically, a guy robbed a place, a bank, and then he was trying to impress Taylor Swift, so he threw all of his money over her wall. No word on whether or not they have yet been married. And also, I don't know if you saw this, there was a Chick-Fil-A brawl. And this is an unbelievable video. I'm going to tweet out this video as soon as I finish the show. This is an amazing situation. There was a Atlanta area Chick-Fil-A. All right, Atlanta area Chick-Fil-A. Two women get into an argument. Both women get out of their car. One woman has a gun and points it at the other woman's head sideways, as one does. And while pointing the gun at the other woman's head sideways, the other woman doesn't blink. The other woman doesn't even start her argument. Now, I'm not an expert on Chick-fil-A drive-through brawls. I will tell you this. If anybody ever points a gun at me, I'm ending my argument. I'm not going to continue it. I will allow you to believe that you have won the argument. You pull out a gun, you can make any argument you want. You can argue that ESPN, woke programming, is great for the future of sports media. You win that argument. Might go to jail, but you win that argument. I'm not risking continuing the argument and also getting my brains blown out, because I believe at some point, as you fall to the earth and realize your life is over, that is the very essence of losing the battle and losing the war. I'll lose the battle, save the war. I'm Clay Travis, giving advice to ESPN, giving advice to everybody. Go to sportsbookreview.com, get hooked up, best lines anywhere for the NHL and the NBA. That's sportsbookreview.com. Also, friends and family, go to thehomeloanexpert.com and make sure you get the best possible mortgage from my guy Ryan Kelly. If you do in the month of April, you get a free weekend at Outkick the weekend in Vegas, all that and more. Love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. DBAP boys and girls, go read the big article I put up on Outkick if you are at all interested in the sports media and business battle between Disney and Netflix and about the future of ESPN now that they have the ESPN Plus programming. DBAP boys and girls, I will see you. Also, download the podcast. It's free still. Cocaine Hippos is unbelievable. You'll love it. Love all of you. I am Clay Travis. This has been Outkick, the show.